Multi-Team DevOps with Konstantin Dinev.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. And I and others have continued to do tons of online user group speaking. So if you're running a .NET or Azure-related user group, I'd love to give a presentation for you. Our sponsor, ClearMeasure, makes this podcast happen. We're a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results. So if we can help, please get in touch. And if you're a .NET software engineer who wants a path to become an architect, we are hiring, and I'd love to work with you. You can go to clearmeasure.com/careers. And before leaving that topic, I wanted to point out a call for a special role. I'm hiring another apprentice. I hired an apprentice last year, and he's grown so fast that he's already been promoted, and I'm coaching him through the next phase. But this new apprentice that I'm looking for should be pretty much early in the career, straight out of schooling. And if you or anyone loves to code and is convinced that being a professional software engineer is your career path, then please apply. My apprentice is going to work hand in hand with me in R&D, blazing the trail and creating patterns, templates, and guidance for developing and running applications with the latest in .NET and Azure, and that's what we help our clients with. And finally, last announcement, be sure to check out the new video show, Architect Tips. We're up to episode 9 on that show. And if you're looking to get back into the conference scene, check out the DEVintersection Conference in Las Vegas this December. I'm excited to be speaking and talking about Blazor architecture at that conference. And so if you come, you'll see me there. Now, I'm excited for our guest today on the show. We have Konstantin Dinev. He's the Director of Product Development at Infragistics. Konstantin, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad to have you. Now, for those who haven't seen you on Stack Overflow or other places, other community aspects, where are you located and what time is it for you right now?
I'm in Sofia, Bulgaria, and right now it's 5:39 p.m. So close to the end of my working day.
Yeah, it's a little bit mid-morning here in Texas, and we've had a few other shows that we've done from leaders at Infragistics, and you guys do components for .NET development teams and Angular and some other JavaScript frameworks. But for people to get to know you and your role a little bit, how did you arrive at Infragistics, and what are the notable marks in your career that led up to that?
Well, thank you for asking. So I started in Infragistics about 11 years ago. And I actually started as a junior ASP.NET web forms developer there. So nice. Yeah, I've gone through the ladder, as you can call it. Web forms, something that at the time I really liked. If you ask me now, it's something that I really hate. Right. The good thing it's almost dead. I mean, and so initially I was doing web forms, but Infragistics was starting the jQuery product at the time, which after a while, so it was called initially, I think, Net Advantage for jQuery, and then we rebranded it to Ignite UI, and we went through another brand in the middle. Like we actually rebranded everything to something different that afterwards changed to Ignite UI. It was a tedious process for us. So I was happy that I was working on web forms, but I also was able to work on jQuery. And then it was almost entirely working on jQuery. So I went through senior developer, then I became team lead, senior manager for a group, and eventually I ended up being a director of product development, I think 3 or 4 years ago. My organization is almost entirely in Sofia, but I do have a team in Uruguay also, in Montevideo. I work with people from our US office, on a daily basis, on the products. And so how large is my organization? I think it's 55 people, something like that. Yeah, which are separated into 7 teams. So it's a fun job. I like it. Yeah, and a lot of interesting people. The product, like everyone here loves the product, especially like the latest that we have that we're focused on is Ignite UI for Angular component framework and our low code solution platform that we deliver, which is the Indigo Design App Builder. So those are the 2 things that are currently my main focus.
Now you run that significant software organization, and that's broadly interesting to all of our listeners who are either leaders in development teams or are running development teams. And there's a lot of discussion out there on how a particular team is effective and what kind of DevOps environment, including agile processes and work tracking, but just automating the DevOps the pipeline for a single application. You've got multiple teams, multiple applications. What are the things that you've had to think about when you have that type of organization as opposed to just a single team, single application?
So I should start from when we moved to Agile, because if we just talk about DevOps and if we just talk about tools, those things are useful to teams if they have the culture and the mindset to actually use them properly. Because it's not sufficient to say that we have continuous integration. Well, what exactly do we have as continuous integration? Do we just have a build rolling, or do we actually have, static code analysis, tests running, sufficient coverage? Do we have the preparedness to actually do things like continuous delivery? And with multiple products and multiple teams, it's not even a single set of tools. It's actually different for everything that we do, because if we talk about our Angular product, we're entirely Node.js based. Like the CI, the CD, everything goes on NPM afterwards as a deliverable, and then on the private feed that we have for the licensed packages. So it's like that. That's the first thing that we got used to. Okay, we started building a product. We end up in a situation where we do still execute a lot of manual tests. We do have some unit tests as automation, but those unit tests at the beginning were not on a real CI pipeline. We used to be on TFS, then moved to Git. TFS was a pain. CI was really difficult to do there because we don't execute tests on an intermediate branch like on Git on a pull request, but we execute tests on a branch where the change already made it in, and right. If something is broken, we have to revert. So it is a mindset, and honestly, it took us a few years maybe to actually get the entire team rolling with the agile mindset, with this you're not just a developer, you also write unit tests, you also are responsible for documenting your features, and so on and so forth. And right now with the design to code, the platform that I mentioned, the app builder, so there are different parts of this platform that are they don't even live together. It's not a mono repo. It's actually a kind of a mono repo. It's for 2 of the things, and then one is entirely separate, like the app builder itself. And there, it's like the first part of the story actually deals with design tools, with UI kits that we have for Sketch, for Figma, and for Adobe XD. And what was the source control that the design team uses for those? I keep forgetting that name.
Yeah, clear case. You got you got subversion. You got
No,
CVS.
it's something that I had
Source
never
cure
heard
fault.
of before. Anyways,
Okay.
I can check it anytime, but like the design team uses that in order to track visual changes, something like that. And then the dev team that builds parsers for metadata on those UI kits, so that we can utilize the symbols and actually generate the code or like an intermediate model out of those things. They have to execute a CI that pulls this source control together with Git, as a it pulls it as a submodel, and then executes tests on sketch designs to verify that the output that they're getting from the parsing is actually matching whatever comes from Sketch or from XD. Then on the other end, we have code generation, which is entirely .NET. It's a .NET project, so there's pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm pretty sure your listeners are familiar with everything in that ecosystem that can happen. So, and it's entirely unit test based, and some integration tests, which are a thin layer for the integration with the actual app builder and the actual design tool parsing. And in the middle, you have an Angular application, which is the app builder as a front end, and another .NET application, which is a .NET 5 API, web API application as back end. So again, different CI for the front end and for the back end. Those are actually separated as repositories because of that reason. Different deliverables from the two, different deployment process, and so the important thing for me is to let the team decide what are the best tools that they want to use. They have to defend the decision. I mean, they have to present it and say, okay, we're choosing this because it helps us in this and this and this manner. We had a question: should we use Puppeteer or Protractor for end-to-end tests for the front end of the app builder? And I'm like, I don't care. Which one is better for you? And they're like, okay, we're going to do the research. Initially, they were leaning towards Puppeteer. After the research, they decided it's going to be Protractor. So this is always a good exercise to ask them to try both, and not just lean on. I've heard that Puppeteer is better. Why? Does it work better for you?
Gotcha. So there's certainly organizations that push all of the teams to use the same set of tools for DevOps environments and are having success. And then the other organizations where they don't even care about standardization and every individual team can have completely different things, and then they're having success. What was, from a leadership perspective, what were the trade-offs that you thought about when deciding to let each team and each application team have their own set of tools instead of driving to standardization?
Well, first of all, I don't want people to be unhappy for no reason, right? I don't want to tell them use Puppeteer just because I think that's the best thing in the world. And then, they have actually tried it. They know that the Protractor works better for them. And they're unhappy because they're forced to use a tool which they know performs worse in their use case than the tool that they would have chosen. And, we can make all of the tools work as long as the results are there, like as long as we don't have, inconsistent continuous integration, commonly seen errors during continuous delivery, like, failures to deploy or something like that. Like, then I don't think that the standardization in this case is so important.
Okay. So what are the minimum DevOps environment standards that you put in place? You mentioned static code analysis. You mentioned some tests. Are there a number of types of test suites and certain steps where, regardless of the tool, you do want all of your teams to have a solution for a certain number of quality control?
Yeah, absolutely. So static code analysis is mandatory. That's in my opinion, and not only in my opinion. Unit tests are mandatory because this is the foundation of the test pyramid. In most of the systems, 90% of your tests are unit tests. With UI frameworks, in a lot of cases, that's almost sufficient. You have to have some security code, static code analysis, because clients always ask about this. In our case, we ship a UI library which is entirely front end. It doesn't do any data access. It doesn't make requests, anything like that. But you have to answer the question. So, do you run any static code analysis for security? Well, we do. And it never flags anything, because it's like, unless we use an eval somewhere, and even for the eval, it would still be an input that the developer actually passed down, through the code logic to the eval. It's not something that we made the request for in the eval back down. But yeah, we make sure that those standards are followed. So for integration tests, for the UI frameworks, those are really not integration tests in the sense that you do for a system, because those are cross-component integration tests, and they're still unit tests. We call them integration, but they're still unit tests. That's sufficient for the UI frameworks. For the platform, for example, for the app builder, that's insufficient. Okay. There, it's mandatory to have a small set of good breadth end-to-end tests, right? Like longer tests that cover user stories that are wider, that are from start to finish, and that's essential to have. Other things, no, I think that is the minimum requirement. Like, you can always think about other things, but
sure. Okay. Well, for those UI tests, or tests that have to really have the whole application loaded, or the user interface, and especially the browsers, because browsers are a lot slower than just running unit tests in memory. What kind of experience have your teams had with those test suites to get larger and larger? How long do those test suites take to run for you?
So it's, if I tell you about, let's say, web forms and even the MVC product that we have from back in 2012-13, we did have tests that run for 3 to 4 hours.
And how many tests were in those suites? Do you remember?
So the 3 to 4 hour test suite was 1,800 tests, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I may be off by 100, but it really doesn't matter. But back then things were a lot slower. Right now, if we execute the same 1,800 tests, first of all, they would be a lot more consistent. Because of better hardware, better browser, and so on and so forth.
Were those mostly Selenium tests?
Yeah, they used to be Selenium tests. Okay. And right now, even when you run Protractor, it's still Selenium driver that fires up your browser. So that, I don't think that's ever going away.
Okay.
So right now, if we look at the Ignite UI for Angular, the tests there run, the entire build runs in 15 to 16 minutes, And
how many tests in there?
Close to 4,000, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, we do have 93.4% coverage. So. Okay. And 15 minutes is really good for an entire build.
Now, how did you get it down to that? Because that is quite quick for that number of full system tests through the UI.
Yeah. So first of all, we do run them headless. So really, there is no actual browser. There's no pixel buffer. But if we look at those tests 2 months ago, they used to be 30 minutes. They weren't. Not just the tests, the entire build, but it was the difference was coming from the tests. It used to be a 30-minute build, and at the time we were running tests in batches where we were separating them by components so that we achieve better consistency for a larger number of tests. we experimented with a switch to make a single run, but with several parallel executions, and that brought down the time from 30 minutes to 16 minutes, which was incredible. Like I was expecting, we would gain 2 or 3 minutes, and bringing it down by a half was just significant.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery.
Now you mentioned headless. Talk about that configuration and what scenarios are run properly without actually loading that browser.
So DOM scenarios run properly. You cannot test images, SVGs, or Canvas on a headless environment. Well, even those you can, if you rely on the API returning properly what the users see. But for things like charting, for example, charting cannot be tested headless. It has to be tested in a real browser, and usually there verification happens on an image verification basis. It's not assertions only that happen in the test framework.
It's not Phantom.js, is it? The headless. What driver? What's Selenium driver?
I honestly, right now, I don't even know. It's hidden underneath Karma, so I can check what the current dependency of Karma is.
So Karma's doing it for you.
Yeah, it could be Phantom.js. Actually, we used to run it in Phantom.js before we had Karma with the Selenium tests that we had for the jQuery product. And we used to run one other one, which I forget the name.
Yeah. Sure. Well, that everybody struggles with that because the first bit is let's get everything in place. What's the minimum? Static code analysis, multiple layers of test automation, and then it's the speed. It's the DevOps cycle. It's how fast for an integration build. Oh, now we're waiting for packaging. Oh, now we're deploying to our first environment. Now we're running a bigger test suite. Oh, it takes so long.
Yeah.
So, did you have to refactor a lot of tests to get them to run in parallel?
Yes. Not for the parallel, but we had to refactor a lot of tests before that because I said we separated them in batches, right? And we separate them in batches because there was a memory leak in Angular that we couldn't get around.
Oh,
yeah, and that ended up being fixed, I think. But we were ending up in a situation where we would see a different test fail and then the test run stop, and it's a pain to get it to reproduce locally. Locally tests actually go through, but then the machine that is on the cloud environments actually has different parameters. It's a different OS, so we did have to refactor a lot of tests because we were initially thinking that the reason could be from our tests, the way that they're written, or from our product, and it's a really it took a long time. We have a really experienced QA on our team. She's been doing this for I don't know, more than 15 years. And she went through everything. She refactored the tests so that she makes the code for the tests less for reusability purposes.
Yeah.
But, and then some of the tests were, flagged as being too long. So, those were refactored to be, separate tests, or like, one test turned into three, or then, or just some tests were validating too many things, like doing a redundancy thing inside. Right. So, yeah, those were also.
That's what we've heard more and more across the industry. You're describing your tester, someone in a dedicated QA role, and they write code all day long. But the code is the tests, and they improve these test suites, as opposed to what used to be, many years ago, someone who was in a QA role that only manually actually executed tests. So it's been a huge trend.
Exactly. And I can proudly say we don't have anyone, full-time manual testing for more than 6 or 7 years now. So all the people are actually QE people. Not that you don't go manually through, components. Even as a developer, you have to check yourself.
Of course.
Yeah, everyone's actually a developer. And so my colleague that I'm talking about, she's actually a developer, and she writes a lot of features now. It's just, for this particular task, she's like, yeah, I'm on top of this. I'm going to handle it because that's my experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, somebody out there's a listener that has somebody in management who looks at all of the effort and the time spent writing automated test code and is saying, no, we shouldn't be doing that. I need you developers working on features. We need to get features out. So you're responsible for many teams, and you've made that decision. Okay, no, we're investing in this. What is the rationale, the argument that you would equip that listener with when having those discussions with their management?
So look, somebody saying that may actually be right for their specific purpose, or for what they're doing. We're a product company. We cannot afford to build technical debt, because that, it comes back. And it comes back so hard that, at a certain point, we have usage for the product. We have clients. Those clients have complaints about quality, and we cannot catch up because we have other clients asking for more features. If you don't do it upfront for a product, you always end up in this situation where you can never catch up. And I've seen that. And it really is a problem that you cannot solve down the road, unless you say, 2 years from now, we're going to completely stop product development to spend a year catching up on technical debt. And catching up on technical debt at that point in time would also mean rewriting half the product because of the issues that you catch when doing the automation. So ever since we started doing test-driven development, or like behavior-driven development, people call it different ways, for UI tests and for unit tests and so on and so forth. To me, this is all test-driven development. It really, the product is better quality than we've ever had. And I'm telling you, 93.47% is our unit test coverage right now for Ignite UI for Angular. And this product has, about 100 issues open at a time on GitHub. Half of them are features. Actually, maybe even more than half are probably features. So we have 102 open right now, 54 of which are features. And this is a heavily used product. So to have only 22 open bugs right now across the entire set, that should speak for itself, right?
Yeah. And none of those are showstopper bugs, I'm assuming.
Nope.
They're just they happen in certain cases. Yeah.
Nope. I don't see any regression or any critical issue that is currently sitting in the queue.
Yeah. Well, one question I'd like to kind of end on as we close out our time here is on just the process and software development lifecycle side of things. You're running multiple teams, and some type of work tracking board tends to always be a part of anybody's process. And then the question is, which stages or what columns or what phases should a feature, user story, whatever people call it, go through as the tools start with in progress, or not started, in progress, done. And everybody agrees, well, that's insufficient, because it's not just that's not all we need to know. What kind of labels or work stages do you guys use across your teams?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we actually have different stages for the different products. So if we talk about the library, the Ignite UI for Angular, we have one thing, and then for the platform, for the app builder side, we have actually totally different tracking. And so I actually have a dedicated product owner who takes care of that, and all of the recent improvements in the past 2 years have been done by him. But for the product for Ignite UI for Angular, we do have this discovery phase, which we call to do, and I think that's really mandatory. So the discovery phase is where we do the feature specification. And that can take actually longer than the actual feature development. If it's executed properly, it should take longer, because if we develop a deep enough specification, or like descriptive enough, then it's easy peasy for the developer to actually take it and put it into code.
Yeah.
So development always moves into validation, which is a back and forth process, right? Because for my time here, I've understood that you always have to have the validation by a different person, not the one that writes the feature. When somebody writing the feature says it's done, but they've already spent so much time on it that they're overlooking issues that are obvious to people who are not looking at this feature. So it's a back and forth between development and validation. After validation, you get to done for the feature development phase. But this doesn't mean that the feature is in a release state, because we offer a developer tool. So you also have to write samples, which is another stage of going through to do development and done, to do development validation and done. And you also have product documentation, which is just in progress, validation, done. And that's pretty much it for the product. If we talk about the platform, then it's different. Again, we do have the discovery for each feature, which is not only feature specification. It's also gathering user requirements, especially if the feature is requested by multiple users. That also have to be incorporated in the specification. And then we do have the to-do development, validation, done on dev, verification on dev, promotion to staging, done on staging, validation on staging. Validation on staging, done on staging, and then promotion to production.
Yeah, that's really good to hear the overview, because there's a good number of people out there who struggle when they're first putting these in place, and the development or the tools like Azure boards or even Jira, they start with such a simplistic set, and then some people are asking the question, okay, well, this is the development board. So if it's documentation or business analysts are not on the quote development team in our company, so they work over there, so they need their work on a different board, and then documentation, they need a different board, which is a different project, and now they're fragmented, and everybody says, well, I'm done, but then you're still shipping nothing to your customers. So
yeah, let me tell you how we bring this together. So we do use GitHub boards a lot for the DevTools products, especially the ones that are on GitHub and are open source. We do use TFS Git, Visual Studio Online, for another set of boards. And actually, Visual Studio Online right now has these new features like delivery plans, for example, that those were released, I think, a month ago. And we started using them. It's a really good feature.
Yeah, they were in preview for a long time.
Well, I discovered it a month ago, let's say.
No, they were like a preview state, alpha, beta, and whatnot, before they actually went to GA.
Right. Yeah. Right now, there is another one in beta, which is Milestones, I think, or something else it was called. But it's a view by months for the different things that you're planning over the year. And then we use this tool called Slingshot. It's actually by Infragistics, and we use it to bring the two together. So the GitHub boards and the Visual Studio Online boards on higher level epics, and then, so it does have a Gantt, and we actually organize the items inside with links to both GitHub and TFS. And so even from a GitHub perspective, because documentation, samples, and the product live in different repositories, their boards are actually in different places. And in order to link them together, we do use this common Slingshot item. It's a lot of tooling, but it helps.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're 2 or 3 developers on one application team, you're probably going to be a lot lighter on tooling. But if you have multiple teams coordinating, I mean, you have to. Otherwise, it's hard to stay organized.
Exactly. Yeah.
So awesome. Well, Konstantin, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of the ways that you've kind of made your teams productive and be able to deliver consistent quality. That's really good information for the listeners out there to hear.
Well, thanks a lot once again for having me, and I really hope that our conversation is useful to everyone listening.
Oh, absolutely. It will be, guaranteed. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.